Today's topic is finding angle measure using the trig ratios that we learned yesterday. You can use the date of May 5th on your notes. And this is the note packet you'll need for today's lesson. There should be 3 pages. So you'll want to grab your iPad real quick before we move on with this. What we're going to do is enter these values into the iPad and come up with decimal equivalents. And the decimal equivalents really are ratios like we saw yesterday. First thing, make sure your calculator is in degree mode. If it's in degree mode, what you want to do is hit the sign button on your iPad and type in 37. It also might be helpful to add a decimal point there so that it will return a decimal answer to you. Remember, you can pause the video at any time if you need to work ahead. So when you enter that into the iPad, the decimal equivalent, rounded to the nearest thousandths, should be 0.602. We're now going to enter cosine of 53 degrees and see what we get. You should get the same answer. All right, let's try another pair. Let's start with sine of 53 and come up with a 3-digit decimal. Rounded to the nearest thousandths, I have 0.799. And we'll do the same with cosine of 37. Same answer. All right, let's try sine of 72. And I got 0.951 rounded. And we'll do cosine of 18. And you should get 0.951. So we have one more pair to look at. Sine of 18, rounded to the nearest thousandths, is 0.309. And then cosine of 72 should be the same answer. The reason that this happens is sine and cosine are considered complementary functions. You'll also notice that the numbers that are grouped together, 37 and 53 or 18 and 72, those numbers are going to add up to 90, making them complementary angles. So sine and cosine, with their angle measures adding up to 90, are considered co-functions, complementary functions. So this generic setup where sine of A is equal to the cosine of 90 minus A, they're always going to be equal values. So they're always going to add up to 90 degrees. What we're going to do today is find the missing angle measure in the triangle. Again, we want to make sure that your calculator is in degree mode. If it's not, you'll want to use the gear in the upper right-hand corner to convert it. These are the steps that we're going to go through when we find the angle measure. So first thing, we want to identify the angle that we're going to calculate. You can use X, you can use a question mark. Typically in trigonometry, we use the Greek letter theta to represent a missing angle measure. Once we have the triangle set up with theta and the sides that they're going to provide, we need to choose the correct trig ratio. Remember, we have sine, cosine, and tangent. So the correct parts need to be there for you to select the correct ratio. We're going to substitute the pieces that we do know into the ratio. Maybe it's the opposite and the hypotenuse, or it's the opposite and the adjacent. Then we're going to proceed with our inverse functions. On the iPad, if you hold down the sine button, you'll see inverse sine. Same for tangent and for cosine. I'm not asking you to raise this to the negative first power. The negative one just simply implies that it's an inverse function. And these are the keys that we're going to use today to come up with our angle measure. So in our first example, it says find the missing angle measure to the nearest degree. They did use a question mark. So consider yourself here at the question mark. From this position, we're going to identify the opposite side as 3 and the side touching is adjacent, which is 8. So opposite and adjacent, tripping on acid, that is tangent. We're going to put down tangent of theta equals 3 is opposite, 8 is adjacent. When you do your homework, please set up the initial structure just like this. Because we're missing an angle, we're going to activate our inverse keys on the iPad. We also show that on our work. So we write inverse tan, and when you use the inverse, we switch the position of theta and the ratio 3/8. So the ratio comes to the left, theta goes to the right. At this point, all you have to do is enter it into the calculator. So I'm going to have it start with theta. You're going to hit inverse tan. You can do 3 divided by 8. It doesn't have to be a fraction key. If you throw a decimal point on 3 or 8, it will return a decimal answer. Unrounded, the iPad gave me 20.556. The directions say to go to the nearest whole degree, so we're rounding it up to 21 degrees. In angle 2, they want us to find the missing angle to the nearest degree. Again, they're using a question mark. So if I'm here, I can identify 5 as opposite, and 11 is the hypotenuse. See how it's across from the 90-degree angle? That will always locate the hypotenuse for you. So opposite and hypotenuse, some old hobo. We're going to use the sine ratio. So we'll start it the same way. We have sine of theta equals opposite over hypotenuse. Just like the last example, we're going to activate our inverse function and we will switch theta and the ratio. And we'll enter it into the calculator. If you don't put a decimal point in on the 5 or the 11 and it returns a funky answer, hold the answer button down and slide up to the equivalent, and it should return, rounded off, about 27 degrees. In example 3, we're looking for angle A. They did not use any kind of marking here, so I'm just going to put my cursor there. But while I'm here, 21 is classified as opposite, and 28 is adjacent, tripping on acid, tangent. So opposite over adjacent, we'll activate our inverse function and switch sides, and we'll enter it into our iPad, and rounded it should be about 36 degrees. In example 4, we're also finding the measure of angle A. Now I see the right angle. Across from that is the hypotenuse, but then the side marked 15 is touching angle A, so that is adjacent. So we have adjacent and hypotenuse. Caught another hobo. This is cosine. Adjacent over hypotenuse. We're going to activate the inverse and switch sides. And then we'll enter it into our iPad. And it's about 34 degrees. Again, please make sure you show me this entire setup when you do your homework. That's what I'll be looking for. The rest of the class examples, they tell you to use table 567. We're not going to use a table, we're going to use the iPad. They're asking you to find the value of each measure. We're going to use our regular trig keys, sine, cosine, and tangent. So you're simply going to hit sine, enter in 8. Again, you might want to use a decimal, and they're going to return a decimal to you. I'm not going to round it off, so number 1, this is the decimal that should be returned. This is actually from a fraction that was converted to a decimal equivalent. We'll do the same with number 2, sine of 63. This should be the decimal that it returns. Cosine of 17. Number 4, the cosine of 27. Now we have 2 answers that are identical here, number 2 and number 4. It's worth mentioning that one is sine and one is cosine, and 63 plus 27 is 90. So 2 and 4 are complementary functions. Number 5, the tangent of 32. And number 6, the tangent of 73. So again, it's returning decimal equivalents to you that were once fractional, and they're the same type of fractions that we set up yesterday in our notes. Moving on to number 7 through 12, they want you to find the measure of angle A to the nearest degree. We are going to use the inverse key. So for number 7, we want to use inverse sine, so hold that button down and slide your finger up. you're going to just simply type in 0.788 and round it to the nearest degree. It should be 52 degrees. Number 8 is also sine, so hold that button down and activate inverse sine. Type in your decimal 0.45, and we should get 27 degrees. For number 9, we're moving on to cosine, so hold the cosine button down, activate your inverse, and we should get 44 degrees. Number 10, another cosine, hold the button down, we have 48 degrees. Number 11, tangent of A. So now we're going to hold the tangent button down, activate our inverse, and we have 27 degrees. Number 12, it's not that it's tricky. When you hold down the tangent button to activate the inverse, if you just type 2, it's going to return something wonky. So type in 2.0, and it should return 63 degrees to you. We're going to skip 13, 14, and 15. We did 4 examples like this already, so I feel that you have a good handle on it. This will be homework number 117. It says finding angle measures at the top. This is a 2-sided worksheet, so make sure you do the back side. If you have any questions on these notes or on this homework, please make sure you get in touch with me. Otherwise, have a great day.